Hello friends, welcome to Old Coins News. In today's video, we will look at three special Queen Elizabeth II coins, which may be small in size but carry a very big history. These coins are not just money. They are symbols of royalty and history from their time. So please watch the video till the end. And let's begin with today's first coin. The 1956 Canadian 5-cent coin is a classic piece of mid-20th century Canadian coinage, struck during the early reign of Queen Elizabeth II. This coin is part of the nickel series, so called because of its metal composition, and 1956 marks one of the early years in which the youthful effigy of Elizabeth II appeared on Canadian circulating coins. In Latin, the inscription on the obverse reads Elizabeth II Dei Gratia Regina, which translates to Elizabeth II, by the grace of God, the Queen, a traditional style carried over from British and Commonwealth coinage representing the constitutional monarchy of Canada. On this 1956 issue, the Queen is portrayed in her early 20s, facing right, a depiction based on the original portrait created by sculptor Mary Gillick, with engraving finishing by Thomas Shingles of the Royal Canadian Mint. This design reflects both the stately dignity and youthful profile of the Queen shortly after her coronation, and it remained in use on Canadian nickels from her accession into the early 1960s. Coins Unlimited Plus One. On the reverse of the coin, the design features the iconic Canadian beaver, a symbol long associated with Canada's natural heritage and its early fur trade economy. The beaver is shown perched on a slab of rock in a watery setting, with a partly chewed log beside it. Flanking the beaver motif are two maple leaves, another hallmark of Canadian symbolism, and below it is a face value 5 cents and the country name Canada with a date 1956. The reverse design was created by G.E. Krugergray, a British artist whose portrayal of the industrious beaver became the quintessential symbol on the Canadian 5-cent coins for decades. Coins Unlimited Plus One. Physically, the 1956 nickel is a dodecagonal, 12-sided, coin, a shape that had been introduced back in the late 1930s and retained through 1964 for 5-cent pieces. Each of the 12 sides helps distinguish the coin by touch and sight, especially useful in daily circulation long before electronic transactions. The coin's weight is approximately 4.54 grams, and it measures roughly 21.2 to 21.3 millimeters in diameter, with a smooth, plain edge, no milling or reeding. Compositionally, the 1956 nickel is 100% nickel, which gives a magnetic property and a distinctive silvery sheen that ages differently than modern copper-nickel-clad planchets. Coins Unlimited Plus One. In terms of mintage, the Royal Canadian Mint produced approximately 9,399,854 examples of the 1956 5-cent piece, not the highest of all Canadian nickels, but a solid circulation figure that makes the coin common enough to find in collections and occasionally in old rolls from banks or coin lots today, yet not as ubiquitous as some later years with much larger mintages. In collector circles, the 1956 nickel is catalogued under reference number kilometer #50A in standard world coin catalogs. Coins Unlimited Plus One. The history of this series is also tied to technological and artistic transitions in Canadian coin production. When Elizabeth II first appeared on Canadian coinage in 1953, her portrait dies were initially struck with a high relief that proved problematic. The detail did not always fully come through on the strike, which led to early adjustments and subtle design alterations such as changes in hair, shoulder detail, and lettering placement. While most of these varieties are most discussed for the early years like 1953 to 1955, the practice of detailing the Queen's effigy and the resulting minor die variations continued into the 1956 series, giving numismatists plenty to study when examining die states and minor varieties. Coins Unlimited. In terms of collecting and value, the 1956 nickel is generally considered a common collectible today. Most coins from typical circulated conditions are valued modestly above their face value, though significance, and thus market price, rises with condition. Uncirculated or high-grade specimens can command a premium from collectors, especially if the strike is exceptionally crisp or has strong eye appeal. In recent grading guides, coins in mint state, MS60, MS65 and above, may fetch several Canadian dollars up to significantly higher amounts in top grades, reflecting both collector demand and the coin's place in the long Elizabeth II nickel series. Canadian coins. Beyond its monetary and collectible worth, the 1956 Canadian 5-cent piece also functions as a cultural snapshot. It captures a moment early in Elizabeth II's long reign and reflects Canada's blend of British constitutional tradition and its own national identity through symbols like the beaver and maple leaves. For historians, collectors, and everyday citizens alike, the coin serves not just as currency, but as a tangible piece of mid-century history, artistic design, and production technique from the Royal Canadian Mint. The 1978 Canadian 5-cent coin is a quintessential example of Canada's standard circulation nickel, struck during the long reign of Queen Elizabeth II, and it embodies not just the monetary utility of small change, but also a century-long numismatic tradition linking Canadian identity, artistry, and metalwork. In everyday usage, this coin is often simply called a nickel, a reference to its metal composition and role in commerce as 1/20th of a Canadian dollar. Yet for collectors and historians, its details tell a layered story of design, production, and cultural symbolism. On the obverse front of the coin, the portrait depicts Queen Elizabeth II facing right, at about 39 years of age. This effigy shows a queen wearing a small crown tiara, her profile dignified and mature, and is surrounded by the Latin inscription Elizabeth II Dei Regina, an abbreviation of Elizabeth II Dei Gratia Regina, meaning Elizabeth II, by the grace of God, Queen. This Latin legend connects Canadian coinage to the broader British Commonwealth tradition, asserting the constitutional monarchy's heritage in a timeless classic style shared across many nations' coinage in the mid-20th century. The obverse portrait used in 1978 was designed by British artist Arnold Machin and executed by staff at the Royal Canadian Mint, reflecting both the artistic aesthetic of the era and the technical requirements of mass coin production. Coins Unlimited +1. On the reverse back side of the 1978 nickel is Canada's iconic North American beaver, Castor canadensis, a creature deeply rooted in the country's economic and cultural history. The beaver design was originally created by English artist George Edward Kruger in 1937 and adopted into Canadian circulation coinage as a symbol of industriousness and national identity. It features the beaver perched on a rock with a log or with detailed nabi, flanked on both sides by stylized maple leaves, another enduring national emblem. Below the beaver is the face value 5 cents, the country name Canada, and the date 1978. The pairing of the beaver with maple leaves creates a distinctly Canadian image that remained on the nickel for decades, linking environmental heritage to everyday commerce. Coins Unlimited. In terms of physical characteristics, the 1978 nickel has a round planchette, as opposed to the earlier 12-sided design that Canada used for many years before 1963, and is struck in 99% nickel, giving it a distinctive silvery hue and magnetic properties. It weighs approximately 4.54 grams, has a diameter of about 21.21 millimeters, and a plain, smooth edge, making it easy to handle and recognize by touch or sight in daily use. This solid nickel composition was typical of Canadian 5-cent coins until the early 1980s, when rising metal costs led to alloy changes in later years. Coins Unlimited +1. From a mintage and circulation standpoint, the 1978 Canadian 5-cent coin is a relatively common issue, with approximately 137,079,273 pieces struck by the Royal Canadian Mint, a large production run reflecting the coin's essential role in cash transactions across Canada. Such a high mintage ensures that the 1978 nickel remains easy for collectors to find, in both circulated and uncirculated conditions, though its abundance means that it typically carries only moderate premiums above face value in standard grades. In most world coin catalogs, this issue is referenced under kilometer #60.1, and it represents the final year of the second obverse portrait type, before a slight modification was introduced in 1979 to make the Queen's image proportionally smaller to the coin's diameter. Coins Unlimited +1. The historical context of this coin ties into broader narratives in Canadian numismatics. By 1978, the beaver design had been a fixture on the 5-cent coin for decades, representing a continuity that Canadians recognized daily. The 1978 portrait of Queen Elizabeth II follows a lineage of obverse designs. The first iconic crown and laurel wreath image appeared upon her accession in the 1950s. The Machin tiara portrait replaced it in 1965, and the finally slightly adjusted portrait arrived soon after the 1978 issue to standardize obverse sizes across denominations. Each portrait type and change reflects technological advances in die engraving and minting, aesthetic preferences of the era, and practical considerations for coin production. SaskatoonCoinClub.ca. Collectors today view the 1978 5-cent nickel as a foundational piece for any Canadian circulation set from the Queen Elizabeth II era. In circulated grades, these coins often trade at modest premiums over their face value, but well-preserved, brilliant uncirculated BU examples can be more desirable, particularly for those building album sets or studying variations in strike quality, toning, or surface condition. Though the design and specifications remain stable over many years, subtle differences between die states, such as varying sharpness of details or minor marks, can intrigue those who delve deeply into numismatic study. Coins Unlimited. Beyond its utility as money, the 1978 nickel serves as a tangible piece of Canada's cultural story, representing not only the reign of Queen Elizabeth II, but also the visual language and national symbols that Canadians encountered in their pockets and purses for decades. Its beaver motif ties to early explorers, indigenous uses of beaver pelts, and the economic history of the fur trade, while the Queen's Latin inscription situates Canada within a broader Commonwealth heritage. For those who collect, study, or simply enjoy coins, the 1978 5-cent piece encapsulates both the everyday and the historic, a small object that carries large narratives of identity, artistry, and circulation politics. Mint.ca. The 1987 1 penny, 1p, is a classic piece of British decimal coinage issued by the United Kingdom's Royal Mint and widely used in everyday commerce across the UK during the late 20th century. This coin derives its Latin-inscribed obverse legend, Elizabeth II D times G times Reg times F times D 1987, from a traditional royal titular used on British and Commonwealth coinage. In full, this terse Latin abbreviation stands for Elizabeth II Dei Gratia Regina Fide Defensa, which translates into English as Elizabeth II, by the grace of God, Queen, Defender of the Faith. This phrase reflects both the constitutional role of the British monarch and her historical position as Supreme Governor of the Church of England, a title that has been part of British coin legends for centuries and connects modern circulation coins with long coinage traditions dating back to medieval times. OnlineCoin.club+1. On the obverse front of the 1987 penny is a third official portrait of Queen Elizabeth II used on British decimal coins, designed by Raphael David McCloof. In this portrait, the Queen is shown facing right, wearing the George IV state diadem, a ceremonial crown worn on state occasions such as a state opening of Parliament. She also wears a pearl necklace and earrings, indicating the dignified and ceremonial aspect of her reign. The McCloof portrait was introduced in 1985 and remained in use on British coins into the mid-1990s, bridging the earlier Arnold Machin portrait and later designs. The effigy is finely detailed, with the Queen's features carefully balanced to accommodate the demands of high-speed coin production while preserving artistic fidelity. The tiny initials RDM, seen on her neck truncation, are the designer's mark and serve as a testament to the craftsmanship involved in the creation of the die engravings. OnlineCoin.club. The reverse back design of the 1987 penny features a crown portcullis with chains, an emblem adopted as a coin standard reverse in the decimal era. The portcullis, originally the badge of King Henry VII and later the Palace of Westminster, is a stylized representation of a defensive gateway or grille, and has long been associated with British authority and governance. Framed within a beaded circle, this motif sits above the denomination text 1 penny and the numeral 1 engraved below, indicating the coin's face value. Unlike many earlier pennies that included text like New Penny after decimalization in 1971, by 1987 the reverse simply read 1 penny, reflecting the standardization that had taken place in British circulating coinage over the preceding decade and a half. OnlineCoin.club. In terms of physical specifications, the 1987 penny is a round, bronze coin minted in the traditional alloy of approximately 97% copper, 2.5% zinc, and 0.5% tin, giving it a distinct reddish-brown appearance that has become iconic for pennies of this era. The coin weighs about 3.56 grams, measures roughly 20.32 millimeters in diameter, and is about 1.52 millimeters thick. Its edge is plain, smooth, with no reading or lettering, which was common for low-denomination coins designed for frequent handling and easy striking on mass-production presses. These dimensions and materials were maintained consistently from the introduction of decimal pennies in 1971 until changes in metal composition in the early 1990s in response to rising metal prices. OnlineCoin.club +1. From a historical and monetary standpoint, the 1987 penny belongs to the era of decimal currency introduced in the United Kingdom on the 15th of February, 1971, when the old pound SD, pounds, shillings, pence system was replaced by a decimal system in which 100 pence equals £1 sterling. The 1p coin was a key part of this currency reform and remained in everyday use for decades. By 1987, this denomination was well established, with billions of pennies circulating throughout the economy for everyday transactions, from buying newspapers and sweets to making exact change at markets and shops. The 1987 date also places this coin in the Makhlouf effigy period, 1985 to 1997. For the Queen, a time when British coin portraits evolved in response to artistic and technical considerations, reflecting both tradition and contemporary design sensibilities. Wikipedia. The mintage figure for the 1987 British penny was extremely high, nearly 500 million coins struck for circulation, which makes the 1987 issue very common. According to Catalogue records, the total production was around 499,946,000 pieces, with additional coins struck for mint sets and proof sets included in that total, bringing the total production slightly higher. This high mintage ensures that the coin remains easily available to collectors and the public alike, and it is typically valued only modestly above its face value unless in exceptional uncirculated or proof condition. In typical circulated condition today, most 1987 pennies trade at modest premiums or simply retain their face value as part of historical collections. Veronum +1. Collectors and historians also look at the 1987 penny as an object representative of late 20th century British culture. Its imagery, linking modern monarchy with ancient symbolism, places everyday money in a context of long-standing tradition. The Latin inscription continues a practice dating back centuries, tying coins to monarchical legitimacy and religious authority. The choice of the portcullis on the reverse connects everyday commerce with the nation's parliamentary heritage. Despite being a low-denomination coin, small details like the specific portrait used, tiny mint marks, and condition variations can make certain specimens of interest to specialist collectors building complete decimal sets or studying die differences and striking quality. OnlineCoin.club. As a collectible item, the 1987 penny is generally considered common due to its massive mintage, but coins in mint state, uncirculated, or from official proof sets produced that year can carry slight premiums among collectors due to their condition and desirability for complete date runs of British pennies. Although most circulated examples remain worth only a few pence or a fraction of their original monetary value on the collector market, pristine examples may be catalogued at a few pounds depending on grading and presentation, particularly if certified by a coin grading service. However, unlike rare commemorative or historically scarce coins, the 1987 penny's value is anchored in its common status and role as everyday money in the UK during a stable economic period. Veronum. In summary, the 1987 Elizabeth II D times G times Reg times F times D1 penny coin is a standard United Kingdom decimal penny featuring the third Makhlouf portrait of the Queen on the obverse, a crown portcullis on the reverse, and a robust bronze composition. Its Latin legend connected to centuries of British coinage tradition, and its high production run reflects its place as a workhorse of everyday currency in the UK. Though common in collections, it remains a fascinating piece for anyone exploring British numismatics, decimalization history, portrait evolution, and the interplay between design and national identity on coins. OnlineCoin.club.